Hi everybody. Alright, so this is the first video for our review for the final. The final, remember, is on Tuesday, December 6th at 12:30. That's next week. It's coming up soon. So, let's start reviewing. So on Edmodo, there's your study guide. And this first video is all about the basics of science. So, the first thing we need to talk about is your first vocab word on this list. First vocab word is observation. Observation is not Mars. Observation is using your senses to describe something. So your senses are your sight, sound, being able to touch and feel and smell. So all these are your different senses. And using your senses to describe something is what an observation is. The next vocab word, or the next two vocab words, are qualitative and quantitative observation. A qualitative observation is the description of the color or the shape or the texture of something, just the feel of it, so to say. So qualitative is describing any shape or color. Quantitative, on the other hand, describes amounts. How much? It can describe the length, the volume, how heavy something is. When you think quantitative, see this N, look at this N. N for numbers. So when you see quantitative, think number, think how much. And on your guide here, I listed two examples. For qualitative, I listed that textbook is rectangular with a red flower and it smells like the library. So this is qualitative because it describes the shape, it describes what something looks like, and it describes a smell. That's qualitative. My example for quantitative is there were 14 sugar cubes laid on the table for the 4 cups of tea they were going to serve. Now that's a lot of numbers in one sentence, and when you see that many numbers in a sentence, think quantitative observation. Remember again that N in quantitative, think numbers when you see it. So quantitative is anything with a number. Alright, the next word on our list is inference. Inference is you're using an observation to make a guess about something. For example, those textbooks I mentioned might be about reading flowers. Or that tea that I was making is probably going to be sweet, especially if I use all those sugar cubes. It's a guess. An inference, like we said the other day during warm-up, is a guess. So a guess, an inference that we can make about this picture is that if the man stabs this tail here, the monster might eat him. We don't know that's going to happen, but we can guess that this will probably happen. We can also guess that maybe the monster will stay asleep. We don't know. A guess doesn't have to be right. An inference does not have to be correct. Our next vocab word on this list is hypothesis. Hypothesis, kind of like an inference, is a guess. It's a predicted explanation for an observed event. And it does not have to be right. It could be about anything. Remember that a hypothesis is all about predicting something that can happen. So in our slides, I talk about hypothesis when it comes to the scientific method. Remember, hypothesis doesn't have to be correct. It just has to be a guess made on what you can see. If we're making a guess about an ice cube melting, you have to make a guess about that. It can't be about an elephant or something else. The guess has to be about what's happening in front of you. The metric system, that's the next vocab word. It's a decimal measuring system, and it uses the meter, the liter, and the gram. Make sure that you remember for the test that we measure time in seconds, that we measure capacity with liters, we measure the weight with a gram, and we measure how long, the length, with a meter. Right, and finally, the final part of our basic of science unit is the scientific method. So that is the approach scientists use to solving a problem. So whenever I say scientific method, think this is what scientists do to solve problems, and really anyone can do this to solve a problem. And we always start the same way. We start off at step 1, and that's observing a problem. If we're going to solve a problem, we have to start with a problem, or with a question. Both work. Step 2 is forming a hypothesis. So now that we have a problem or a question, we have to make a guess. And remember, it doesn't have to be correct, but the guess does have to be based on what's happening around us. Step 3, we have to test our hypothesis, and we have to make sure we follow clear steps when we're testing. And after we run our test, this is the best part. We get to see if we were right or wrong. We have to analyze our results. That's step 4, analyzing your results. You have to see if your test showed you whether or not your hypothesis was right or if it was wrong. Then finally, step 5, we have to communicate our conclusion. And by that I mean we have to draw a conclusion. We have to explain why we were right or why we were wrong. Why was our guess right? Why was our guess wrong? In step 5, when we're talking about a conclusion, that's what we talk about. Right? And those are all the parts of the basics of science. That's the whole unit. If you have any other questions, please come see me during my office hours or feel free to email me. Hi guys, good luck studying.